It started with a guitar riff. At 11:07 p.m. on February 20th, 2003, the first notes of Desert Moon blasted through the packed interior of the Station Nightclub in West Warwick, Rhode Island. The band was Great White, once famous in the 80s, now playing small venues for loyal fans. About 460 people were crammed into the club that night. They were there to hear the music, relive memories, forget their problems. No one saw what was coming. As the band launched into their opening song, jets of pyrotechnics shot upward from the stage, brief, bright flames intended to add energy to the performance. The crowd cheered, but within seconds, the mood shifted. Behind the band, a yellow glow climbed the wall. It wasn't part of the show. The foam behind the stage had caught fire. At first, it looked small, just a flicker of flame curling up the acoustic insulation. Some people in the crowd even laughed, thinking it was still part of the performance, but the flames spread with terrifying speed. The foam ignited like gasoline. A black smoke rolled across the ceiling, thick and choking. Within 30 seconds, the entire stage wall was engulfed. Panic set in. People turned toward the exits, but there weren't many. The main entrance, the way most had come in, funneled into a small hallway. Other doors were poorly marked, blocked, or hard to access in the crush of people. Everyone surged toward the front, desperate to escape the growing inferno behind them. But the fire moved faster than they could. Within 90 seconds, the nightclub was completely engulfed. Flames raced across the ceiling. Plastic lights melted. The smoke turned pitch black, filled with carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide, and other deadly gases. Breathing it for even a few seconds could knock you unconscious. Dozens of people made it out quickly, but for those still trapped inside, survival became nearly impossible. The narrow front door turned into a deadly bottleneck. People piled on top of one another, 5, 6 deep. Some were crushed, others suffocated. A photographer named Michael Doc Geilenfeld, there to shoot the show, was one of the first out. He turned back and snapped photos of the chaos. One of those images, bodies stacked in the doorway, would become a haunting symbol of that night. Inside, the situation was worse than anyone could imagine. Survivors described screams turning to silence as people collapsed. Some tried to crawl low to find air beneath the smoke. Others clawed at walls, hoping to find a window or a door. One man broke through the kitchen to escape, only to burn his hands on a metal doorknob. Another tried to guide people by the sound of his voice until the smoke took his breath away. A firefighter arriving on scene said it looked like hell in a box. The building had gone up like a matchstick. In all, 100 people died that night. 200 more were injured, many with burns over most of their bodies, others with lifelong scars, both physical and emotional. Entire groups of friends were lost together. Parents died alongside their children. A man who had just proposed to his girlfriend earlier that evening died while shielding her from the flames. She survived. He didn't. The tragedy shocked the nation. In the days that followed, questions turned to blame. How could something like this happen? How did a small club become a death trap? The answers were infuriating. The station had been operating with flammable polyurethane foam, 2 types in fact, lining the stage walls for soundproofing. It was never approved for use in public spaces. It released deadly gases when burned and caught fire almost instantly. The owners had installed it as a cheap alternative to proper sound insulation. They claimed they didn't know it was so dangerous, but tests showed that just a small flame could ignite a massive fire within seconds. The club also lacked a sprinkler system. In a 2003 inspection, the fire marshal had approved the venue without requiring one, because of its size and existing codes. But codes don't account for fire that spreads like liquid. Then there were the pyrotechnics. The band's tour manager had signed paperwork claiming he had approval to use indoor fireworks. But he didn't. He never even asked. The flames he used were designed for large venues with open ceilings and fire suppression, not for low-ceilinged wooden clubs lined with foam. In short, everything went wrong. The owners of the club, Jeffrey and Michael Derderian, were charged with 200 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 for each victim, under different legal theories. The band's tour manager, Daniel Bichele, was also charged. The trials tore families apart. Some demanded justice. Others just wanted to heal. Bichele ultimately pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison and served 2. In court, he broke down in tears and apologized to every family. Many forgave him. Some did not. Michael Derderian took a plea deal and served 2 years. His brother Jeffrey got probation and community service. To many, it didn't feel like justice. But for the survivors, the wounds went deeper than courtrooms. Linda Fisher, one of the victims, had just turned 29. She'd gone to the concert with friends from work. Her family searched for her for days after the fire, hoping she was in a hospital somewhere. Her body was found later in the pile at the front door. Joe Kynan, another survivor, was burned over 40% of his body. He lost fingers, ears, his nose. He's had over 140 surgeries. He still suffers from chronic pain, but he speaks publicly now, helping others understand what trauma really means. And then there's Gina Russo. She went to the concert with her fiancé, Fred. They stood near the stage. When the fire started, they tried to run. Gina was pulled from the building, barely alive. She awoke from a coma weeks later to learn Fred hadn't made it. Her story, like so many others, became part of a greater movement. That movement turned grief into change. In the aftermath, Rhode Island and many other states updated their fire codes. Sprinkler systems were now required in all nightclubs above a certain capacity. Exit doors had to be clearly marked and unobstructed. Pyrotechnics were heavily restricted in enclosed venues. But no law could bring back the dead. To this day, survivors still meet on the anniversary. They light candles, say the names, hug one another. A memorial now stands on the site of the old nightclub, where music once played and lives were lost. It features 100 carved granite leaves, one for each soul who never made it out. The station fire was one of the deadliest nightclub fires in American history. But more than that, it was a tragedy built on neglect, on cost-cutting, on assumptions that things would be fine until they weren't, because that's how these stories always go. A little foam, a little fire, a little lie on a permit form, then a flash, a scream, a night no one would forget. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.